Okay, it is string changing day. You're going to need two things. You're going to need a pair of nippers, and you're going to need a needle nose pliers. Those are the two tools you have to have, and your tuner, of course. First thing, take your ukulele and detune the strings. All right, so now I've just taken off the full tune. Okay, pair of nippers, cut off the bottoms here. I always hold the strings so they don't go flying up and poke me in the eye. And then we pull off the ends over here. Okay, take them off and take them off. Okay, these you want to roll up, make like a little macrame project out of it. And this way, the dog, the cat, your aardvark doesn't end up eating them, and then I can throw those in the trash. Also, we pull these little guys off, okay, and these also go in the trash. Okay. And that is de-stringing. Now, this is a great time to take a rag and just double check that all of your places that are hard to get to have a chance to get pretty again. The other thing I sometimes use is once in a while I get a ukulele in that somebody's actually practicing, and they've got sort of lotion or skin cells or whatever just hanging out on here. This is steel wool. I don't remember what size it is. I think it's relatively grade 000 steel wool. And all I do is take this and just rub it on the frets here a little bit, shine them up, make them pretty, get some of the dead skin cells off, just make it look nice, and we're ready to go. It doesn't take much. If you run your finger along here and you feel the frets sticking out, you will want to have a different tool. And I don't see where mine is sitting here. Here it is. This is a sanding block from Ace Hardware, about 400 grit. You don't need to do it every time, but if you do feel any sharp edges, just take it and rub along the edges here. And that will pretty quickly mellow out what any frets that are sticking out. I usually only have to do that on new instruments. Usually they're after that. They don't need to be done anymore. All right, it's time to put some strings on. If this comes off, the nut comes off, a little tiny drop of Elmer's glue will put it back in place. You don't need to freak out about that. It happens all the time. Pay attention. The saddle, these come out, and they're super easy to lose if you're not paying attention. So just make sure you keep an eye on that. Again, you shouldn't have to do anything with it. If it's all bumpy and weird, I might take the steel wool to it and straighten it out just a little bit. But basically, when you're changing strings, you usually don't have to do anything that isn't already done. When you do an initial setup, you of course do a little bit more. Now, the strings, okay, got my string package. You're going to want to write today's date on the string package so you know when you changed them. And then you go get, they're marked, string 4, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So obviously you want to start with 1. And here's where the magic happens. Okay, string number 1. I'm going to do this for every string so you can get it. Hopefully between all of them you can understand what I'm up to here. String number 1 goes down here through string hole number 1, obviously. This is the tail. This end is the tail, and this is the main string. So the tail, on the tail, you push that away from your body, around behind the main string, and bring it around. So you've got kind of a loop thing going on here, okay? And then don't go through the hole, but go over the top twice. And you end up with something that looks a little bit like that, okay? Pull that tight. By pushing the tail away from your body on string number 1, when you tighten it up, it should push the tail now along the bridge, and you're in good shape. Take this string up here. I always push it through once, push it back through. It creates a loop here, and then I take this tail and I put it through the loop. So I'm essentially making a little knot up here. Now I took a class one time, they said, don't do that, they're hard to get off. That's exactly the point. I don't want this coming off until I'm ready to have it come off. So essentially I've just made a little knot there, and now that can't come off, and the knot that I have down here means it can't come off. Okay, let's do another one, string number 2, through the hole. Now all the other 3 strings, the tail is going to go toward my body. So here I am, tail around and behind, and then again, don't go through the loop, but over the top and through, over the top and through twice. You end up with something that looks like that. Give it a little pull, and notice the tail this time is going that direction. I want to take the tail that's here, I want to push it through and underneath this one. So you see I didn't tighten this up yet because I'm going to need to push the tails all the way through each of these little knots here. Okay, again, pull this up, run it through the hole. Okay, and you don't need to leave any slack really on plastic strings. If it's metal strings, you do, but on plastic strings, they're just going to stretch like crazy. Again, I'm putting the tail back through the hole on the tuning peg, creates that little hole, little loop, and then the end goes through the loop. I give it a pull, and string is tied. Okay, do this twice more, and we'll be ready to finish it up. All right, next one, string number 3, through the hole. Make sure as you go along that the string from the tail from number 1 is getting captured by the other strings. So in other words, this tail is ending up underneath these other strings. Again, this one, tail toward me, around behind the string, over the top twice. 1, 2. Again, nice little knot going on there. I've captured string number 1 underneath it. String number 3 is now going to get pushed underneath string number 2 and string number 1, and we're in good shape. Okay, again, pull this up. Don't need to leave any slack in it. Through the hole, back through the hole, creates the loop. Take the tail, push it through the loop, and tighten it up as best you can. Sometimes, depending on the tuning peg, sometimes it grabs onto them kind of hard. We don't need to worry about it overly. What are you doing here? There we go. Just grabbed onto the string more than I wanted him to. All right. And again, I'm not worried about these knots quite yet. They're going to tighten up when we tighten up the strings. All right, last one. 4 through hole number 4. Tail toward me, around and behind, over the top, twice. Okay, so looks like that. When I tighten it down, the tail magically goes in the direction I want it to. Take this, slide it under string number 3, under string number 2, under string number 1. Push everything over the edge of the bridge so that it's all nice and neat and pretty down here. And then we're going to tighten this guy up. Okay, through the hole, back through the same hole. Creates our loop up here, and then put your tail through the loop. Okay, so the only thing I check now, I double check that these guys are laying more or less flat. They don't have to be perfect, but you want them to look kind of nice. And then as you do your first tighten, let's say I'm going to tighten string number 4 and make sure it's in the correct groove up here. And then I want to hold my finger on top of this while I'm tightening it up because I want the string to come in at the bottom of the spindle and push upward. Okay, so I'm just making sure as I'm starting it that it's going to be going in at the bottom of the spindle and then pushing upward as it goes around. Okay, so again, I'm going to go up here, follow this string up, make sure he's in the correct groove, and then I'm just holding the string down while I tighten the tuner. Once you've got it, once it's on there properly, you don't have to keep holding this down, but at least in the beginning you want to make sure to hold it down with your finger. Otherwise it'll have a tendency to come in at the top of the spindle, and then the spindle can't do its job correctly. Some ukuleles have the classical guitar thing, very similar procedure. Just make sure that the string goes onto the spindle correctly, and then you will not have anything to worry about down the road. Right, and then number 1, kind of a brat. Alright, so everybody has a little bit of tension on them now. They're not going to go anywhere. And so I do a couple of things at this point just to make sure. Number 1, I want to make sure everybody's in the correct slot up here. I want these all going down. I want to make sure that my strings are sitting properly on the saddle. And then I want to make sure that down here underneath this, that looks pretty nice. Okay. At this point, I take my needle nose pliers and I pull on each of the strings up here to make sure that that little knot that we created is tightening down correctly. Okay, so I just want to make sure they're all tight, not going crazy on it. I'm just giving them all a little bit of a pull just to make sure they're not going to go anywhere. And now the excitement begins, tuning this thing up, and it's going to take 100,000 turns of these knobs. One of the things I didn't mention with this, make sure when you're starting to tune them up initially, on these 2 spindles, they go counterclockwise, so that the string comes in on the inside and they go counterclockwise, and you see how the string is going in on that side. Okay, and so if you do this wrong, I see people who do their own string jobs, they do this incorrectly all the time. So just make sure that they're coming up the neck on the inside of the spindles and then spinning around. These ones go counterclockwise. These 2 are clockwise. So you see it comes in on the inside and then it goes like that. Okay, so that should get you a professional looking string change pretty quickly. Now, at your house, you have to just now spend 1,000 hours tightening all these up. Oops. But because I change a gazillion strings every year, I have this guy, the cheapest drill that they make, and a little gadget that goes in here for doing these, and then this speeds the process along quite a bit. You kind of get it close. I don't want to get crazy on it. Okay. You can see how many twists it takes just to get it up to an initial tune. Okay, and of course, time for a tuner. Stick it on here. Now what I do on a first tune is I'm going to tune this up to G sharp, C sharp, E sharp, which is more popularly known as F, and then A sharp. Now they're all tuned up a half a step over where we want them in the end, but they're going to be stretching like crazy, so you want them, so it's just easier and faster. G sharp, C sharp, F, A sharp, G, C, E, A. G sharp, C sharp, F, A sharp, and that way then as you work on it, see already it started off at G sharp, it's already a quarter of a note behind. And that way you can spend a little, it'll tune up a little bit faster that way because the strings are a little bit overstretched. And then, you know, in 15 minutes you have to tune it again, and 15 minutes after that you tune it again, and then eventually you tune it into correct G, C, E, A. But at least initially tune it up a half a step too high, and it just cuts down on your work. I'm chopping off the ends of those 3 strings. I try to do them all at once so they look pretty, and then I'm chopping off the end of this one, and then of course come up here and chop these guys off. I leave about a quarter of an inch to half an inch on these. It's going to be helpful when it comes time to take those strings back off. If the knots sometimes are hard to get off, which is exactly why we put the knots on there. But it's nice to have the little bit of a quarter inch or so of string, because sometimes you have to push backward on there to get the thing to loosen up. All right, so dun, 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 new strings on there. I don't know how long that took, hopefully not too long. And again, I'm going to still tuning to G sharp, C sharp, F, and A. Okay, nice sound on a little ukulele. Double check. I always play one song. And so on, right? So I don't want to play the whole thing, but you see what I'm doing. Okay, playing well, looks good down here. Looks consistent across here, laying nicely on the saddle. When you do a setup for the first time, you also check the distance from the strings, the bottom of the strings to the top of the frets, and sometimes you have to make some adjustments on this in order for it to be at the correct height. Again, sometimes the nuts come off and you just put one little teeny tiny drop of Elmer's glue on there, and it'll glue right back in and be there. Making sure I've done these on the insides rather than just coming up here haphazardly. And we're in tune and strings are changed. Hopefully that's helpful, and that's all I got to say. Hitting the off button.